Hey there. Tonight we're traveling through the steamy, flour-dusted history of pizza. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Adjust your pillow, pull up your covers, maybe dim those lights a bit. We're about to journey from ancient flatbreads baked on hot stones to the worldwide phenomenon that comforts millions today. You'll smell the wood-fired ovens of Naples, feel the stretch of dough between your fingers, and taste how something so simple became so beloved. This isn't just about food. It's about innovation born from necessity, tradition passed through generations, and how the humble creations of the poor eventually conquered the world's palate. So breathe deeply, let your mind wander through time, and join me as we follow the aromatic trail of humanity's most cherished comfort food. Long before delivery apps and cardboard boxes, before cheese pulls and pepperoni debates, there was simply bread, flat, practical, and born from necessity. That warm disk of dough you casually order on a Friday night has ancestors older than most civilizations. Picture yourself in Mesopotamia, nearly 4,000 years ago. The air is dry, tinged with dust from the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You're watching as a woman kneels beside a flat stone heated by carefully tended flames. Her hands, cracked from work and weather, press a simple mixture of ground grain and water into a thin circle. This is one of humanity's earliest flatbreads, not quite pizza but its distant ancestor. The flatbread wasn't created as a culinary achievement. It was survival, plain and simple. Grains could be stored through harsh seasons, ground when needed, and transformed into portable filling sustenance with just fire and stone. No yeasts or leavening agents, no time for rising, just the essentials. As you travel forward a few centuries to ancient Egypt, you notice something similar but slightly different. Egyptian bakers have discovered wild yeasts. Their flatbreads rise slightly, creating a softer texture. Workers building the pyramids are paid in these loaves, early currency made from flour. The bread has become more than food. It's economy, it's life. Now imagine yourself on the dusty plains outside Persepolis, around 500 BCE. Persian soldiers are preparing for battle, hungry after marching for days. With no proper ovens available, they do something remarkable. They flatten dough on their shields and place them over fire. These shield-baked breads, crisp on the bottom, slightly charred in spots, become improvised plates for meats and cheeses. Sound familiar? It should. The Greeks introduce you to plakos, layered flatbreads, topped with herbs, onions, and sometimes cheese. These aren't eaten alone but dragged through oils and wine, softening the bread and adding flavor. The boundary between bread and meal begins to blur. In Athens' busy agora, street vendors sell these flatbreads to citizens who eat while walking, perhaps the world's first fast food. The scene shifts again. You're in ancient Rome, where the placenta isn't a biological term but a layered bread soaked with honey and flavored with bay leaves. Romans have refined the flatbread, making it thinner and more portable. In the crowded insulae, Rome's apartment buildings, few have ovens. Citizens buy their flatbreads from commercial bakeries and bring them home to top with whatever's available. Olive oil, garlic, dates, cheese. These Romans have something else interesting. They're creating special ovens built to maintain steady heat, curved on the inside to reflect heat evenly. The design looks surprisingly familiar to any modern pizzaiolo. Around these ovens, communities gather, share news, and connect over the universal experience of breaking bread. Walk through the dusty streets of Pompeii before Vesuvius's eruption, and you'll find evidence of nearly 35 bakeries serving a population of only 20,000. In the ruins, archaeologists discovered round, flat loaves preserved in ash, bread frozen in time, looking remarkably similar to pizza bases we'd recognize today. In these same ruins, they found cooking surfaces that could easily pass for pizza preparation stations in any modern kitchen. As empire gives way to Middle Ages, flatbreads evolve in countless directions across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. In the Byzantine Empire, shepherds bake flatbreads directly on hot stones and top them with local cheeses and foraged herbs. In Middle Eastern bazaars, you'd find manakish, flatbreads topped with za'atar spice mix and oil. In India, naan emerges from tandoor ovens, while across Central Asia, travelers carry journey bread that can last for weeks. Each culture adapts the basic formula, flour, water, heat, to available ingredients and needs. Without knowing it, they're all participating in a global conversation about the most efficient way to transform grain into sustenance. They're all moving, step by step, toward what we would eventually call pizza. What makes these early flatbreads so important isn't just their role as historical curiosities. It's that they reveal something essential about human innovation. We've always found ways to make the simple transcend into something meaningful. These early bakers weren't trying to create a global phenomenon. They were just trying to feed themselves and their communities with what they had. As you drift between these ancient kitchens and cooking fires, notice how the experience connects people across time. The satisfaction of watching dough transform under heat, the comfort of something warm and filling, the sharing of a simple meal. These experiences belong not just to our ancestors, but remain embedded in our relationship with pizza today. The foundation was laid, the concept proven across continents and millennia. But for flatbread to become pizza as we know it, we need to travel somewhere specific. We need to walk the narrow streets of Naples, where poverty and necessity would transform simple bread into something that would eventually conquer the world's palate. As flatbread spread across continents, something unique was taking shape in one specific corner of the Mediterranean. Let's narrow our focus now, leaving behind the ancient world and traveling to 16th century Naples, a crowded, chaotic port city in the Kingdom of Naples, part of the Spanish Empire but stubbornly, proudly distinct in its identity. Naples in the 1500s was a study in contrasts. The aristocracy lived in palazzos with sweeping views of the bay, while the Lazzaroni, Naples' working poor, crowded into small dwellings near the port. The gulf between wealthy and poor wasn't just economic, it created entirely separate food cultures. The nobility dined on elaborate feasts, influenced by French cuisine, while the Lazzaroni needed something that was cheap, filling, and could be eaten quickly before returning to the docks, markets, or workshops. Walking through the Spanish Quarter, the scent of wood smoke mingles with sea air. The narrow streets barely allow sunlight to reach the worn cobblestones. Laundry hangs between buildings like festival banners, and the constant hum of conversation creates a soundtrack distinctly Neapolitan. This is where true pizza begins to emerge, not in royal kitchens, but in the outdoor workspaces of street vendors serving the city's laborers. These early pizza makers worked with startling simplicity: a wood-fired oven, a marble slab for stretching dough, and ingredients so basic they would puzzle modern pizza enthusiasts. The dough was just flour, water, salt, and a bit of yeast, left to ferment slowly overnight. The slow fermentation wasn't a culinary choice, but a practical one. Dough prepared in the evening could be baked fresh in the morning. In these early days, pizza existed in forms we might not recognize. Some were simply flatbreads rubbed with lard and salt, eaten folded like a wallet. Others were topped with small local fish, garlic and olive oil. Cheese was a luxury many couldn't afford regularly. Instead, herbs foraged from hillsides added flavor without cost. The pizza of 16th century Naples wasn't a composed dish. It was improvisation based on availability. What set Neapolitan pizza apart from other Mediterranean flatbreads was its unique preparation method. The dough was stretched thin in the center, but left thicker around the edges, creating what we now call the cornicione, the puffy rim that forms the crust. This wasn't merely aesthetic, it created a natural handle for eating while walking, crucial for laborers who couldn't pause for proper meals. The ovens themselves played a crucial role in pizza's development. Built from volcanic stone that retained intense heat, they reached temperatures far higher than home ovens, often exceeding 800 degrees Fahrenheit. This extreme heat created the distinctive charring that became synonymous with Neapolitan pizza: leopard-spotted bottoms, blistered edges, and a texture that was simultaneously crisp and tender. By the late 18th century, something momentous happened that would transform pizza forever: the widespread adoption of the tomato. Though tomatoes had arrived in Europe from the Americas in the 1500s, they were initially viewed with deep suspicion. Being related to deadly nightshade, many Europeans believed tomatoes were poisonous. The upper classes particularly avoided them, which ironically helped cement tomatoes as poor people's food in Naples. Imagine standing outside one of the first pizzerias, not yet called that, but simply a baker's shop with a wood-fired oven open to the street. It's around 1780, and you're watching as a pizzaiolo ladles a vibrant red sauce onto stretched dough. This isn't the cooked-down, herb-infused sauce we'd recognize today. It's simply crushed tomatoes with a pinch of salt, their bright acidity cutting through the richness of the dough. This combination, flatbread and tomatoes, created a flavor profile that would eventually captivate the world. By the early 19th century, dedicated pizza shops began appearing throughout Naples. One of the earliest documented establishments was the Antica Pizzeria Port Alba, which opened in 1830 and still operates today. These weren't restaurants as we understand them. They were workspaces with counters facing the street, where customers would order, watch their pizza being made, and carry it away wrapped in paper. Some had a few wooden tables where workers could pause briefly to eat. The pizza makers themselves developed into a distinct class of artisans. Being a pizzaiolo was a respected trade, with skills passed from father to son. The techniques weren't written down but taught through observation and practice: how to feel when dough was properly fermented, how to stretch it without tearing, how to judge the oven's temperature by the color of the stones. These weren't chefs in the classical sense, but specialists in one perfectly executed food. As Naples grew more crowded through the 19th century, outdoor space became increasingly precious. Families lived in single rooms, often without cooking facilities. This created greater dependence on street food, and pizza became a cornerstone of Neapolitan daily life. It wasn't considered restaurant food or special occasion fare. It was sustenance, reliable and affordable. The pizza of this era remained remarkably consistent: a thin base topped with tomatoes, garlic, oil, and perhaps anchovies or local herbs. Cheese was still used sparingly, when used at all. What we now call pizza marinara, topped with tomato, garlic, oregano, and oil, wasn't named for seafood, but for the mariners who favored this easily preserved combination. It could last through a morning's work without refrigeration, a crucial consideration in Naples' hot climate. By the mid-1800s, pizza had become so embedded in Neapolitan culture that visitors to the city began noting it in their accounts. Alexandre Dumas, author of The Three Musketeers, described pizza in his 1843 travelogue, detailing the varieties available to the working poor and noting how integral it had become to daily life in Naples. Yet despite this local popularity, pizza remained largely unknown outside Naples, considered too humble to export to other regions. This regional specialty, born from necessity and perfected in the streets, was about to experience a transformation that would catapult it from local street food to national symbol. All it needed was a royal visit and an innovative pizzaiolo with a flair for patriotic presentation. June 1889 brought sweltering heat to Naples, along with an unusual commotion. The newly unified Kingdom of Italy was barely 2 decades old, and tension still simmered between the northern power centers and the southern regions like Naples, which many northerners viewed as backward and foreign. To bridge this divide, King Umberto VIII and his consort, Queen Margherita of Savoy, embarked on a goodwill tour of their southern territories. The royal couple's arrival in Naples created a stir among all classes. For the Lazzaroni and their pizza makers, however, this visit would unknowingly change their humble street food forever. As the story goes, part history, part legend, but documented enough to carry weight, Queen Margherita had grown weary of the elaborate French cuisine that dominated royal dining. Curious about local specialties, she requested a sampling of this distinctive flatbread she'd heard the common people of Naples couldn't live without. The honor of preparing this royal meal fell to Raffaele Esposito, proprietor of Pizzeria Brandi, already well established in Naples. Imagine the pressure on this pizzaiolo. His humble street food would be judged by the most refined palate in the kingdom. Rather than simply presenting existing varieties, Esposito decided to create something special, something that would honor both his craft and his country. In a stroke of inspiration that balanced culinary skill with political savvy, Esposito prepared 3 different pizzas. The third became immortal, topped with tomatoes, mozzarella cheese and fresh basil, red, white and green, mirroring the colors of the recently adopted Italian flag. This patriotic presentation wasn't just visually striking, it brought together flavors that complemented each other perfectly. The acidity of tomatoes, the creaminess of fresh mozzarella, and the aromatic brightness of basil. The pizza was delivered to the royal quarters at Capodimonte Palace, still steaming from Brandi's wood-fired oven. According to palace records, the Queen was delighted, preferring this colorful creation to the other varieties. A thank you note from the royal household, which Pizzeria Brandi still displays today, confirms her enjoyment of the meal. Esposito, recognizing a marketing opportunity few could dream of, named his creation Pizza Margherita in the Queen's honor. With this simple act of branding, perhaps the first in pizza's long history, he elevated the dish from street food to something worthy of royalty. The validation from the throne transformed pizza's social standing overnight. What makes the Margherita milestone so significant wasn't just the royal approval. It was that the pizza itself represented a perfect balance that would define Neapolitan pizza going forward. The ingredients were minimal, but had to be of the highest quality. The fresh mozzarella wasn't the low-moisture, pre-shredded variety we often use today, but mozzarella di bufala, cheese made from the milk of water buffaloes raised in the marshlands of Campania. The tomatoes were San Marzano, grown in the volcanic soil near Mount Vesuvius, lending them a sweetness and low acidity unique to the region. This emphasis on quality ingredients rather than quantity began to distinguish Neapolitan pizza from flatbreads elsewhere. The dough, too, evolved toward a specific ideal, thin in the center, but with a puffy, chewy cornichone around the edges, spotted with characteristic leopard pattern char marks from the intense heat of the wood-fired ovens. Following the royal endorsement, pizza began to climb the social ladder in Naples. While still affordable for working people, it started appearing in proper sit-down establishments rather than just street stalls. The wealthy, who had previously dismissed it as peasant food, now found it fashionable, though they might eat it with knives and forks rather than folded in hand like the Lazzaroni. As Naples entered the 20th century, the standardization of what constituted true Neapolitan pizza began to take shape. The pizza Margherita became the benchmark against which other variations were measured. This wasn't just culinary tradition, but part of Neapolitan identity and pride. The specific techniques, hand-kneaded dough, wood-fired ovens, minimal but perfect toppings, were passed down through generations of pizza aioli with near religious reverence. Perhaps most importantly, the Margherita milestone marked the moment when pizza transcended necessity to become an experience. No longer just calories to fuel workers' bodies, it became something to be appreciated, discussed, and perfected. The simplicity remained, but now it was intentional simplicity, the kind that reveals the quality of each ingredient and the skill of the maker. Yet despite its newfound prestige in Naples, pizza remained largely unknown beyond southern Italy. For pizza to become a global phenomenon, it needed ambassadors to carry it across oceans. It needed the great migration that would bring Neapolitans and their culinary traditions to distant shores, particularly to a country that would embrace pizza with such enthusiasm that it would eventually claim it as its own, America. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, a massive human tide began flowing from southern Italy to distant shores. Between 1880 and 1924, more than 4 million Italians left their homeland for America, with Neapolitans and Sicilians making up a significant portion of this exodus. They fled crushing poverty, limited opportunity, and political instability, carrying little more than hope and the cultural knowledge embedded in their hands, including recipes and techniques passed through generations. These immigrants didn't board ships intending to introduce Americans to pizza. Their focus was survival in a foreign land, where they didn't speak the language and faced significant discrimination. Settling primarily in dense urban areas, New York's Lower East Side, Boston's North End, Philadelphia's South Side, and similar enclaves in other industrial cities, they recreated fragments of home in these new surroundings. Imagine stepping off the boat at Ellis Island in 1905, exhausted after weeks at sea, your pockets nearly empty, but your mind full of memories. The scent of wood-fired ovens, the precise feel of properly fermented dough, the balance of simple toppings that transformed humble ingredients into something transcendent. These sensory memories became anchors in a disorienting new world. The first pizzas made in America were created in tenement kitchens, not restaurants. Immigrant women adapted to unfamiliar ingredients and the constraints of coal-fired apartment ovens. The water was different, the flour milled differently, even the air affected fermentation differently. Yet through persistence and adaptation, they recreated approximations of the food that connected them to their heritage. The transition from home cooking to commercial enterprise began organically. In 1905, Gennaro Lombardi opened what is widely acknowledged as America's first pizzeria on Spring Street in New York's Little Italy. Unlike Naples' street corner operations, Lombardi's was a proper storefront, though still remarkably basic by today's standards. A coal-fired oven replaced the wood-fired ones of Naples, an adaptation to local fuel availability that would significantly influence the development of New York-style pizza. Early American pizzerias didn't serve a mainstream clientele. They catered almost exclusively to fellow immigrants who understood what this food represented. The prevailing American palate, still heavily influenced by British culinary traditions, wasn't immediately receptive to the bold flavors of garlic, olive oil, and oregano that characterized Italian cooking. Pizza remained an ethnic curiosity, largely unknown outside immigrant communities for decades. This period of cultural isolation allowed Italian-American pizza to evolve along its own trajectory. Coal ovens, which burned hotter than traditional wood fires, created a distinctively charred, slightly drier crust. Mozzarella made from cow's milk replaced the scarcer buffalo mozzarella of Campania. The limited availability of San Marzano tomatoes led to adaptations in sauce preparation. These weren't compromises so much as the birth of something new. Italian-American pizza was becoming its own tradition, rather than merely a replica of Neapolitan pizza. The early pizzerias established patterns that would define American pizza culture. Lombardi's in New York, 1905, Popper's Tomato Pies in New Jersey, 1912, Frank Pepe's in New Haven, 1925. These establishments became institutions, training grounds where pizza-making techniques were refined and passed along. Many of America's subsequent pizza empires can trace their lineage back to these pioneering operations through a complex genealogy of apprenticeships and family connections. World War II marked a crucial turning point in America's relationship with pizza. GIs returning from the Italian campaign brought back cravings for the foods they'd encountered overseas. Suddenly, pizza had advocates beyond the Italian-American community. The post-war economic boom created a newly affluent middle class eager for novel dining experiences. Italian food, once considered exotic and somewhat suspect, began its journey toward becoming one of America's adopted cuisines. The 1950s witnessed pizza's first major leap toward mainstream American acceptance. No longer confined to Italian neighborhoods, pizzerias began appearing in suburban communities and commercial districts. College students discovered that pizza offered an affordable, satisfying meal that complemented late-night study sessions and social gatherings. The shareable nature of pizza made it naturally suited to America's increasingly casual dining culture. Regional styles began to emerge, each reflecting local tastes and influences. New York developed its large, foldable slices, practical for the city's on-the-go lifestyle. Chicago created the deep dish pizza, a knife and fork affair that maximized toppings in a city known for hearty appetites. Detroit contributed its rectangular pan pizza with crispy, cheese-crusted edges, influenced by the city's industrial baking trays. New Haven became known for its distinctive pizza, coal-fired and often topped with clams. These variations weren't random. They reflected each community's unique composition, economic circumstances, and available ingredients. Pizza was becoming a canvas for American regional identity, much as it had once expressed Neapolitan culture. The child of necessity had become a medium for culinary creativity. Italian Americans watched this transformation with mixed emotions. On one hand, the mainstream acceptance of their food represented a form of cultural validation after decades of marginalization. On the other, they witnessed something deeply personal being transformed into something increasingly commercial, often by non-Italians who lacked understanding of the traditions behind the food. By the late 1950s, entrepreneurs recognized pizza's commercial potential beyond traditional restaurant settings. The first Pizza Hut opened in Wichita, Kansas in 1958, with Domino's following in 1960 and Little Caesars in 1959. These chains standardized production methods, creating consistent products that could be replicated anywhere, a distinctly American approach to food service that prioritized reliability over artisanal variation. What's remarkable about pizza's American journey isn't just its commercial success, but how it transcended its Italian origins to become, paradoxically, something quintessentially American. In a nation built by immigrants, pizza's story, arriving humble, adapting to new circumstances, and ultimately thriving beyond its origins, mirrors the American narrative itself. As pizza completed its transformation from ethnic specialty to American staple, technological innovations were poised to unleash the next phase of its evolution. Freezers, delivery vehicles, mass production techniques, and marketing strategies would soon combine to make pizza one of the most consumed foods in America, setting the stage for its eventual return to the global stage, this time as an American export rather than an Italian import. The post-war boom of the 1950s and 60s fundamentally reshaped American life, from where people lived to how they ate. As families migrated to newly built suburbs, their eating habits shifted away from ethnic urban restaurants toward convenience foods that suited busier lifestyles and more standardized tastes. Pizza stood at this culinary crossroads, poised for a transformation that would take it from neighborhood specialty to ubiquitous American staple. This transformation began with a seemingly simple innovation: the pizza box. While paper bags had sufficed for the short walk home in dense urban neighborhoods, suburbanization created demand for pizza that could travel miles without losing heat or structure. The corrugated cardboard box, with its insulating air pockets and structural integrity, made delivery possible on a scale never before imagined. A specially designed prop in the center, the table prevented the cheese from sticking to the lid, solving a problem that had limited pizza's delivery radius. Meanwhile, the rise of television brought pizza into American living rooms, not just as a food, but as a cultural reference point. Shows like The Honeymooners and later Happy Days portrayed pizza as the quintessential casual meal, while advertising jingles embedded themselves in the national consciousness. The 1960s advertising slogan, Pizza Man, fast as fast can be, reflected a new American expectation. Food should come to you, not the other way around. As demand grew, traditional pizza-making methods, which required skilled labor and lengthy preparation, couldn't keep pace. Enter mechanization. Dough sheeters replaced hand stretching. Conveyor ovens standardized cooking times. Portion control ladles ensured consistent sauce application. These innovations weren't merely about efficiency, they democratized pizza production, allowing anyone with basic training to replicate what had once required years of apprenticeship. The freezer case at your local supermarket became pizza's next frontier. In 1962, Totino's introduced the first commercially successful frozen pizza, followed soon by Tombstone and Celeste. These products bore little resemblance to fresh pizza, but they solved a different problem: immediate gratification at minimal cost. American home freezers, now standard in middle-class homes, became personal pizzerias stocked with ready-to-heat options. Perhaps the most revolutionary development came from food scientists working for pizza chains. They engineered a new kind of mozzarella, low moisture, part skim, that could be manufactured in massive quantities, shredded, frozen, and distributed nationally. This cheese melted differently than traditional mozzarella, providing the signature stretch captured in countless commercials. The standardized cheese, combined with specially formulated sauces designed for extended shelf life, created the consistent flavor profile that defined chain pizza for ages. The 1970s saw pizza chains expand aggressively through franchising. Unlike the original Italian-American pizzerias, which grew organically through family connections, chains used franchising to rapidly multiply without requiring master pizzaioli at each location. Pizza Hut's distinctive red roof became a roadside fixture across America. Domino's pioneered guaranteed delivery times, transforming pizza into a logistics business as much as a food service. Little Caesars introduced the concept of hot and ready pizza that eliminated even ordering ahead. Regional styles didn't disappear during this franchise boom. They intensified as local pizzerias sought to differentiate themselves from standardized chain offerings. Detroit-style pizza, with its rectangular shape and caramelized cheese edges, gained devoted followers. St. Louis contributed its distinctive cracker-thin crust, topped with Provolone cheese. Colorado developed its mountain pies with honey-sweetened crust. Each variation carved out loyal followings in their respective territories. The 1980s brought pizza to yet another American institution, the school cafeteria. Following a controversial 1981 USDA decision classifying pizza as a vegetable due to its tomato content, pizza became a fixture on school lunch menus nationwide. For many American children, rectangular school pizza became their first regular exposure to the food, creating eating patterns that would follow them into adulthood. As pizza integrated more deeply into American life, the economics of its production reflected broader economic trends. Large chains vertically integrated, controlling everything from tomato fields to cheese production to distribution networks. While a pizzeria in 1950s Brooklyn might have sourced ingredients from different local suppliers, by the 1990s, a Pizza Hut in suburban Dallas received perfectly portioned ingredients from centralized commissaries, ensuring that a pepperoni pizza in Texas tasted identical to one in Maine. The pizza that emerged from this two-decade transformation had evolved far from its Neapolitan roots. American pizza was bigger, heavier, and topped with a wider variety of ingredients, many of which would have bewildered a traditional pizzaiolo. Pineapple, barbecue chicken, and ranch dressing found their way onto crusts, reflecting America's penchant for culinary fusion and abundance. The hand-tossed artisanal approach had given way to systematic production designed for consistency rather than nuance. By the end of the 20th century, pizza had completed its integration into American identity. College students survived on it. Friday night family dinners centered around it. Office parties and celebrations featured stacks of boxes. The phone number for the local pizza delivery had become as essential as emergency contacts. Pizza had transformed from an ethnic curiosity to a food so thoroughly American that many young people had no awareness of its Italian origins. This great transformation didn't just change pizza, it changed America's relationship with ethnic foods broadly. Pizza blazed a trail that other cuisines would follow, entering through immigration, adapting to American tastes, commercializing through chains, and ultimately being reinvented as something new. The humble flatbread that had fed Neapolitan workers had become America's favorite food, setting the stage for pizza's next journey: global domination. As American pizza chains saturated their domestic market in the 1980s and 1990s, they turned their gaze outward. What had once traveled from Naples to New York would now make a third migration, this time carrying American innovations back to the Old World and beyond. The global pizza revolution began not as a culinary movement, but as a carefully orchestrated business expansion, with Pizza Hut opening locations in Japan, Australia, and the United Kingdom, followed swiftly by Domino's and other competitors. This wasn't simply Italian food returning home in altered form, it was something distinctly different. American pizza arrived overseas as a perfectly packaged cultural product, complete with marketing strategies, operational systems, and a promise of consistent experiences. When the first Pizza Hut opened in Beijing in 1990, Chinese customers weren't just buying a meal, they were purchasing a slice of American lifestyle, portrayed in films and television as modern and desirable. In countries without strong pizza traditions, American chains faced few preconceptions about what pizza should be. This freedom allowed for remarkable adaptations that reflected local tastes and cultural sensibilities. In Japan, pizza evolved to feature seafood toppings like eel, squid, and sea urchin. Mayonnaise, rarely seen on Western pizzas, became a standard sauce base for Japanese variations. In Korea, sweet potato became a popular crust filling, creating a dessert-like border around savory toppings. The most dramatic transformations occurred in India, where vegetarianism and religious dietary restrictions necessitated complete reinvention. Paneer, fresh cheese, replaced mozzarella on many pies. Tandoori chicken became a signature topping, bridging familiar Indian flavors with the new format. Perhaps most remarkably, chains developed the curry pizza, replacing tomato sauce with spiced curry bases that appealed to local palates. Pizza Hut's crown crust pizza in the Middle East featured miniature cheeseburgers embedded in the outer crust, a hybrid creation that would have been unrecognizable to both Neapolitan originators and American innovators. These weren't merely marketing gimmicks but genuine cultural adaptations, similar to how pizza had transformed when crossing from Naples to New York decades earlier. Each reinterpretation reflected local ingredients, eating habits, and flavor preferences. Pizza proved remarkably adaptable as a concept, essentially a flat base with toppings, while allowing infinite variation in execution. The spread of American-style pizza coincided with broader economic liberalization in many countries. As the Soviet Union collapsed and China embraced market reforms, Western brands like Pizza Hut became symbols of economic opening and modernization. The 1990 opening of Pizza Hut in Moscow's Gorky Street created hours-long queues, not just for the novelty of the food, but for what it represented, a tangible connection to Western consumer culture, long kept at bay. Meanwhile, a counter-movement was brewing in the pizza's ancestral home. As processed, commercialized pizza spread globally, Italians increasingly viewed authentic Neapolitan pizza as cultural heritage in need of protection. In 1984, Antonio Pace and Lello Cerese established the Associazione Verace Pizza Napolitana, AVPN, to codify and preserve traditional Neapolitan pizza-making methods. The organization created detailed regulations governing everything from acceptable ingredients to proper oven temperature, 485 degrees Celsius, no less, to the exact hand movements for stretching dough. This wasn't merely culinary nostalgia. It was a direct response to what Neapolitans saw as the corruption of their cultural invention. In 2010, their efforts culminated in Pizza Napolitana receiving protected status from the European Union as a traditional specialty guaranteed product. UNESCO went further in 2017, recognizing the art of Neapolitan pizza making as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, placing it alongside traditional Japanese washoku cuisine and Belgian beer culture as cultural treasures worthy of preservation. As travelers became more sophisticated and food media expanded through television and later the internet, awareness of authentic pizza grew. By the early 2000s, a new breed of pizzeria began appearing in global cities, places that rejected American commercialization in favor of Neapolitan traditions. Wood-fired ovens, imported 00 flour, San Marzano tomatoes, and minimal toppings became hallmarks of this neo-traditional approach. Pizzerias in London, Sydney, Tokyo, and even New York began producing pizza that intentionally looked back to Naples rather than to American innovations. This created a fascinating global dialogue. American chains continued expanding their reinterpreted pizza worldwide, while traditional Neapolitan methods experienced a renaissance. In Bangkok, you might find a Pizza Hut serving Tom Yum Goong pizza alongside an artisanal pizzeria importing Italian flour and tomatoes to create textbook Neapolitan margaritas. Both could thrive because they served different needs and different customers. The internet accelerated this dual movement, simultaneous globalization and return to roots. YouTube videos of Neapolitan pizzaiolo stretching dough received millions of views. Food bloggers documented regional American styles previously unknown outside their local areas. Instagram made pizza one of the most photographed foods globally. A pizza maker in Sao Paulo could now learn techniques from both Naples and New York without leaving home, creating hybrid styles that drew from multiple traditions. Celebrity chefs further elevated pizza's global profile. Wolfgang Puck, popularized gourmet California-style pizzas topped with smoked salmon and caviar. Japan's Daisuke Matsui became renowned for creating mathematically perfect pies based on the golden ratio. Nancy Silverton's Pizzeria Mozza in Los Angeles proved that pizza could command luxury prices and wine pairings previously reserved for fine dining. These high-profile interpretations legitimized pizza as worthy of serious culinary attention, not merely fast food. By the 2020s, pizza had completed a remarkable global journey. What began as sustenance for Naples' working poor had transformed into arguably the world's most adaptable, recognizable food format. You could find pizza interpretations in approximately 100 countries, from Argentina's Fugazeta, double-crusted pizza filled with cheese and topped with onions, to Lebanon's manakish, flatbread topped with za'atar and olive oil, to Japan's okonomiyaki, a cabbage-based pancake sometimes called Japanese pizza, despite having independent origins. Despite this diversity, or perhaps because of it, pizza remained instantly identifiable worldwide. The fundamental concept, a base topped with complementary ingredients, usually including some form of sauce and cheese, provided sufficient structure while allowing endless variation. Pizza had become simultaneously local and global, commercial and artisanal, traditional and innovative. This global pizza revolution represented something larger than culinary evolution. It demonstrated how food could cross cultural boundaries while adapting to local conditions, a form of cultural exchange that respected both tradition and innovation. As pizza continued its journey, the question remained, what made this particular food so uniquely capable of conquering the world's palates while still maintaining its essential identity? Beyond its remarkable culinary adaptability, pizza has achieved something few foods can claim. It has transcended its status as mere sustenance to become a cultural icon embedded deeply in our collective consciousness. This final transformation from food to symbol reveals something profound about both pizza and ourselves. Consider how pizza functions in our social rituals. It's the default choice for celebrations ranging from children's birthday parties to office achievements. It arrives at dorm rooms during late-night study sessions and at homes on moving day. Pizza marks transitions, builds community, and creates shared experiences across otherwise disparate groups. Unlike many foods that signal specific cultural or socio-economic positions, pizza moves fluidly between contexts, equally at home at a casual family dinner or reheated at 3 a.m. after a night out. This social flexibility stems partly from pizza's inherently communal nature. A pizza is designed to be shared, creating a moment of connection when the box opens and hands reach toward the same food. The ritual of dividing a pizza, deciding who gets which slice, negotiating topping preferences, creates a miniature exercise in cooperation and compromise. Even when eating pizza alone, we're participating in a cultural experience that connects us to countless others engaging in the same activity worldwide. The psychology behind pizza's appeal runs deeper than convenience or taste. Research in food science reveals that pizza hits a perfect trifecta of flavor compounds: umami from the cheese and tomatoes, sweetness from the sauce, and complex carbohydrates from the crust. This combination triggers multiple pleasure centers in our brains simultaneously. The melted cheese activates the same neural pathways as certain addictive substances, creating a mild but genuine dopamine response. Our affection for pizza isn't just cultural conditioning, it's partially hardwired into our neurochemistry. In mass media, pizza has become visual shorthand for specific situations and emotions. Film directors use pizza deliveries to establish ordinary life before extraordinary events unfold. Television writers employ pizza to signal friendship, team bonding, or communal problem-solving. These portrayals both reflect and reinforce pizza's cultural position. When E.T. eats pizza in Spielberg's classic film, or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles declare their devotion to it, these moments resonate because they connect fictional characters to genuine human experiences. The internet age has only amplified pizza's iconic status. Memes featuring pizza circulate globally, requiring no translation because the emotional connotations are universally understood. Social media platforms fill with #pizza night posts that look remarkably similar, whether they originate from Seoul or Seattle. During the early days of cryptocurrency, the first real-world transaction using Bitcoin was the purchase of 2 pizzas for 10,000 BTC, a transaction now commemorated annually as Bitcoin Pizza Day, and worth noting that those Bitcoins would later be valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. Even pizza's divisive aspects strengthen its cultural position. The pineapple debate, whether this tropical fruit belongs on pizza, has inspired passionate arguments, scientific surveys, and even political posturing. When politicians want to appear relatable, they often share their pizza preferences. These seemingly trivial discussions actually reinforce pizza's importance as shared cultural territory. We argue about pizza precisely because we collectively care. Pizza has also become an unexpected canvas for artistic expression and technical innovation. Competitive pizza acrobatics, where dough spinning becomes performance art, draws international competitors. Pizza tattoos adorn thousands of bodies worldwide. Contemporary artists like Chloe Wise create sculptures of pizza that hang in prestigious galleries, transforming the everyday into art. These creative engagements with pizza demonstrate its evolution beyond food into cultural artifact worthy of celebration and serious consideration. Perhaps most telling is how pizza functions as comfort during difficult times. During natural disasters, pizza deliveries to emergency workers become newsworthy symbols of community support. During the COVID-19 pandemic, pizza deliveries spiked worldwide. People turning to a familiar comfort during unprecedented uncertainty. When the world feels chaotic, there's something reassuring about the predictable pleasure of pizza, a constant in an inconstant world. This journey from Neapolitan street food to global cultural touchstone reveals something remarkable about human ingenuity and connection. We transformed a simple combination of flour, water, and toppings into a food that feeds not just our bodies, but our sense of community, creativity, and comfort. Pizza's story is ultimately our story about adaptation, migration, innovation, and the universal language of shared food. As you drift towards sleep, consider that the next pizza you enjoy connects you to a lineage stretching back centuries and spanning continents. From ancient bakers to modern pizzaiolos, from Naples to New York to New Delhi, pizza's journey continues with each new interpretation. What began as an answer to hunger has become an answer to something deeper, our need for connection, comfort, and simple pleasure in a complex world. As our journey through pizza's remarkable history comes to a close, we've traveled from ancient hearths to modern kitchens, from Naples' crowded streets to global pizza chains. This humble food, born from necessity, transformed by migration, and reinvented countless times, has become something far greater than the sum of its ingredients. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the countless hands that have stretched dough, ladled sauce, and shared this simple pleasure across millennia. In pizza's story, we find our own tales of adaptation, creativity, and the universal language of food that connects us despite our differences. The next time you lift a slice, remember you're participating in one of humanity's great shared experiences, a tradition that continues to evolve with each generation. From its modest beginnings to global icon, Pizza reminds us that the most extraordinary phenomena often have the simplest origins.